You have been told your entire life to keep a tight line. It is the golden rule of fishing. Never let them have any slack. Always stay in contact with your bait. But what if I told you that this sacred rule is exactly why you went home with an empty live well last weekend? What if the obsession with feeling the bite is the exact reason why the fish keep spitting your bait out? Today, we are going to break down a hard truth that goes against everything your grandfather taught you. We are going to explore why adding more slack to your line could instantly double your hookup rate. I promise you, by the end of this video, you will rethink every single cast you make. You are going to learn the secret mechanics of why fish really let go and how a simple change in your rod angle can fix it. So I have to ask, are you brave enough to drop the tension, or are you going to keep ripping baits out of the mouths of hungry fish? This topic is incredibly important because it attacks the very foundation of how we learn to fish. When we first pick up a rod, we are terrified of missing a bite. We want to feel everything. The fishing industry feeds into this fear by selling us rods that cost $500, promising ultimate sensitivity. We buy braided line with zero stretch just so we can feel a fish breathing on our lure. We build a muscle memory that says tension equals control. We do this for years, we do it for decades. When we miss a fish, we blame the fish. We say they were just short striking. We say they were not aggressive enough. We almost never blame the fact that we were holding the bait so tight that the fish literally could not eat it. It is time to break down why this tight line habit is ruining your days on the water. Let us talk about the tension trap. Picture this. It is a beautiful morning on the lake. The water is like glass. You make a perfect cast near a fallen tree. The moment your bait hits the water, you immediately engage the reel. You crank the handle just enough to make the line perfectly tight from the rod tip to the bait. You are ready. You do not want to miss a single tap. This is what your dad taught you. This is what your grandpa taught you. Never let them have any slack. Always keep in contact with the bait. But here is the hard truth. That tight line is exactly why you are missing fish. When you keep your line pulled perfectly straight, you think you are in control. You think you are ready to strike like a cobra, but you are actually creating a massive warning system for the fish. Every tiny vibration from your shaking hands travels straight down to the lure. The bait does not look natural. It looks like it is tied to a string. And guess what? The fish know it. They have been caught before. They are not stupid. They feel that resistance and they run. What happens under the water? Imagine a big bass slowly swimming up to your plastic worm. She does not have hands. She cannot pick it up to inspect it. She has to flare her gills and suck water in to pull the bait into her mouth. If your line is tight as a guitar string, you are fighting her natural way of eating. She tries to inhale the bait, but the tight line stops it from moving freely into her mouth. She feels the resistance immediately. In a fraction of a second, she spits it out. You feel a quick tap on your rod tip. You swing as hard as you can, and you pull back nothing but water. You stand there wondering what went wrong. You tell your buddy that the fish are just short striking today, but they are not short striking. They just hit a brick wall called your tight line. Giving them a little bit of slack changes the whole game. When she sucks in that bait, the slack allows it to fly right to the back of her throat. She does not feel you, and you get a perfectly solid hookup every single time. The lie we all believed. For decades, the fishing industry has sold us on sensitivity. We buy rods that cost $300 because they promise to let us feel a fish breathing on the bait. We spool up with braided line that has absolutely zero stretch. We want to feel everything, but this obsession with feeling the bite has ruined our ability to just let the fish eat. When you rely 100% on your hands to feel the bite, you are already too late. By the time that shockwave travels up the tight line, through the expensive rod, and into your hands, the fish has already made a decision. If the line was perfectly tight, the fish felt you at the exact same millisecond you felt the fish. It becomes a game of reaction time, and fish have faster reaction times than a 40-year-old guy standing on a boat deck after 2 cups of coffee. If you introduce just a little bit of slack into the system, you break that immediate connection. You lose that instant feeling, yes, but you gain something much more valuable. You gain time. Seeing the bite before feeling it. This brings us to the most important skill you can learn on the water. You have to become a line watcher. Imagine casting out a soft plastic stick bait. Let it fall on a semi-slack line. There is a distinct bow in the line floating on the surface of the water. You are not holding the rod perfectly still and tight. You are watching that curve of line. Suddenly you see the line twitch. Then it starts to slowly swim to the left. You do not feel a single thing in your hands. Your rod tip has not moved an inch, but you know exactly what is happening. A fish has taken the bait and is swimming away with it. Because the line was slack, the fish felt absolutely zero resistance. It thinks it just found a free meal. Now you have all the time in the world to reel up that slack and drive the hook home. Watching the line takes practice. It is not as easy as just waiting for a jerk on the rod. But once you train your eyes to watch that bow in the line, your hookup ratio will absolutely skyrocket. The mechanics of a strike. Let us break down exactly how a fish eats a moving bait. Think about a spinnerbait or a swim jig. You are casting it out and winding it back in. Most guys keep the rod pointed right at the bait and reel with steady tension. When a fish comes up behind it and attacks, they often push the bait forward before they actually grab it. If your line is totally tight, the fish hits the bait and the rod immediately loads up. You feel the heavy weight and you swing, but often the hook is not inside the mouth yet. The fish just pinned it or grabbed the very tail end. Now imagine you are fishing that same moving bait, but you hold your rod at a slight angle. You allow just a tiny bit of a bow in the line from the rod tip to the water. When the fish attacks and pushes the bait forward, that little bit of slack allows the bait to pause and fold into the mouth of the fish. It gives the lure the freedom to actually be eaten. That tiny split second of zero tension is the difference between a caught fish and a missed opportunity. Patience pays off big time. We all have that one friend who sets the hook like he is trying to pull the lips off a hippopotamus at the very first sign of a bite. Do not be that guy. When you fish with a slack line, you are forced to be patient. You cannot just react blindly. Let us say you are pitching a jig into heavy cover. You pitch it in, let it sink on slack, and watch the line. You see a tick and the line jumps. If you were tight, you would swing instantly. But because you have slack, you have to reel down first. You have to turn the handle 1 or 2 times to gather up that loose line before you can set the hook. That physical action of reeling down takes about 1 second. That 1 second is exactly what the fish needs to turn its head. When a fish eats a bait, it usually flares its gills, grabs the meal, and then turns back toward the cover it came from. When the fish turns, the hook is perfectly positioned in the corner of its mouth. Your forced patience, created by the slack line, guarantees a perfect hookup. The secret of the free fall. Let us talk about fishing jigs and Texas rigs. A massive percentage of your bites are going to come while the bait is falling to the bottom. If you cast out and immediately close the bail, your line becomes tight. As the bait sinks, it is fighting the tension of the line. Instead of falling straight down into the strike zone, it swings back toward you in an arc. We call this the pendulum effect. Not only does this pull the bait away from the fish, but it also makes the bait look totally unnatural. Crawfish do not glide slowly sideways through the water column on a tight string. They drop straight down to the rocks. By stripping off a few extra feet of line after your bait hits the water, you allow it to fall straight down on a completely slack line. The presentation is natural. It drops right in front of the face of the fish. And because there is no tension, a fish can suck it in on the way down without feeling the rod tip. You just watch the line floating on the water. If it stops sinking early, you set the hook. Making it look real. Think about fishing weightless plastics like a sinking worm or a soft jerkbait. The entire magic of these lures is their action. They shimmy, shake, and dart when they sink. The manufacturer designed them to move completely on their own, but they can only do that if they are free from tension. If you hold a tight line on a sinking stick bait, it does absolutely nothing. It just drags through the water like a dead stick. You are killing the very action that makes the lure so expensive and so famous. You have to give it slack. You cast it out, let it hit the water, and pull 2 or 3 feet of line off the reel. Let it sink freely. As you watch the surface, you will see the line slowly sliding into the water. If a bass grabs it, the line will suddenly speed up or shoot out sideways. I have stood on the bank next to guys throwing the exact same bait to the exact same spots. They catch nothing because they hold it perfectly tight. I catch 5 because I let it fall on a loose line. The proof is right there in the presentation. Battling the elements. Fishing in the wind is frustrating. It really tests your patience. When the wind is howling and the waves are rolling, your first instinct is to keep your line as tight as possible. You think that if the line gets slack, the wind will blow it around and you will lose contact with your bait. But keeping a tight line in rough water is a massive mistake. Think about what is happening to your rod tip. You are standing on a rocking boat or a windy bank. Your hands are moving. Your rod is bouncing up and down with the waves. If your line is tight, every single bounce of the rod tip is yanking your bait off the bottom. Your lure is down there doing a chaotic, unnatural dance. It looks ridiculous. By feeding out some slack and letting a bow form in the line, you create a shock absorber. The wind can blow the slack and the rod can bounce, but the bait stays perfectly still on the bottom where it belongs. The slack absorbs all the movement. A bass sees a perfectly natural resting meal instead of a jumping plastic toy. The proof is right next to you. Picture this scenario. You are standing shoulder to shoulder with an old-timer on a local pier. You both have the same bait. You are casting to the exact same drop-off. You are focused, gripping your rod, keeping that line completely taut. You are ready for a fight. The old guy next to you is relaxed. His rod is resting on the rail. His line has a huge curve in it, swaying in the breeze. He is drinking a cup of coffee. Suddenly, his line slowly straightens out. He casually puts down his cup, reels down the slack, and sets the hook into a huge fish. You missed 3 bites in the same time frame. Why did he win? Because he gave the fish the confidence to eat. The fish that bit his bait felt nothing. They swallowed it deep and swam away. The fish that bit your bait felt the rod tip instantly and spit it out. This happens every single day on lakes all across the country. The guys who relax and let the line hang loose often outfish the guys who are overly aggressive and hyper-focused on perfect tension. Staying in the strike zone. Let us dive deeper into the pendulum effect, especially when you are fishing in deep water. Say you are casting a swim bait out to a ledge in 20 feet of water. You want that bait to stay near the bottom as long as possible during your retrieve. If you cast out, let it hit the bottom, and then keep your rod tip high with a tight line, look at the angle you have created. As soon as you turn the handle, that bait is pulling upward away from the bottom. It leaves the strike zone almost immediately. The fish down there never get a good look at it. But if you keep your rod tip pointed low, almost touching the water, and maintain a semi-slack line while you slowly roll the reel handle, the bait stays down. The slight slack prevents the lure from lifting up into the water column. It swims naturally along the rocks, grinding the bottom. You cover so much more productive water just by giving up that urge to keep the line tight like a bowstring. It is simple geometry, but it completely changes your fishing results. The physics of the hook set. There is a huge misconception about setting the hook on a slack line. People think if the line is not tight, you cannot get enough power into the hook point. They imagine pulling on a wet noodle. But let us think about the actual physics of a hook set. If your line is already perfectly tight, your rod is already partially loaded. When you swing, you are just increasing the tension. But if you have a little bit of slack, you actually generate more speed. When you reel down quickly and snap the rod back, The rod tip builds up incredible velocity before it catches the weight of the fish. It is like cracking a whip versus pulling a rope. That sudden, high-speed snap drives the hook point through bone and cartilage much more effectively than a slow, tight pull. By the time the line comes tight during your swing, the rod is fully loaded with kinetic energy. You blast that hook home with real authority. You do not lose power with slackline. You actually gain acceleration, which gives you far superior penetration. Explosions on the surface. If there is one place where a tight line will absolutely destroy your catch rate, it is topwater fishing. Imagine you are walking a frog over lily pads early in the morning. The water erupts. A massive bass blows up on your frog. It is the most exciting thing in the world. Your adrenaline spikes. If your line is tight, you will instantly pull the bait right out of the mouth of the fish. You will see your frog go flying through the air behind you. Topwater strikes are violent, and fish often miss the bait on the first lunge, or they need a second to pull it under. If you have slack in your line while working the bait, the bass can take the frog and turn down with it. That extra foot of loose line sitting on the water gives the fish the freedom to dive. You wait to feel the weight of the fish, and then you set the hook. Throwing topwater lures on a tight line is a guaranteed way to lose the biggest fish of your life. Keep the rod tip down, keep a bow in the braided line, and let them take it down into the dark. Busting the deep hook myth. Whenever I talk about letting fish eat on a slack line, somebody always brings up the exact same argument. They say, if I give them slack, they will swallow the hook entirely and I will kill the fish. This is simply not true. Fishing with a slack line does not mean letting the fish swim around with your lure for 5 minutes before you do anything. It is about the initial strike. It is about that first second or two when the fish decides to commit. Because you are watching your line carefully, you know the exact moment they take the bait. You see the line jump, you see it move, you reel down and set the hook immediately after recognizing the bite. You are not waiting for them to digest it. The hook is almost always in the roof of the mouth or the corner of the jaw, right where it belongs. The only difference is that you actually hook the fish instead of ripping the bait out of its lips because your line was too tight. Pay attention to your visual cues and you will never have a problem with deeply hooked fish. Trusting your eyes over your hands. To really master this technique, you have to change your equipment slightly. You cannot be a line watcher if you cannot see your line. Using dark green or clear line makes this technique extremely difficult, especially on a cloudy day. You need to switch to high visibility braided line. Bright yellow or neon green line floating on the surface becomes your strike indicator. It is like having a giant bobber that does not spook the fish. You tie a long fluorocarbon leader to the end of the braid so the fish do not see the bright line underwater, but above the surface your eyes are glued to that neon string. The moment it twitches, stops sinking, or accelerates, you know exactly what is going on. Your eyes become infinitely more sensitive than your hands. You can see a bite happening long before you could ever feel it. It takes a few trips to get used to staring at the line instead of looking around at the scenery, but once you train your brain to react to visual cues, you become a completely lethal fisherman. Learning from other fishermen. We can learn a lot by stepping outside of our own specific fishing bubbles. Look at guys who fish for massive catfish or giant carp. They are chasing some of the smartest, most cautious fish in the freshwater world. How do they fish? They use bait runner reels or leave their bails totally open. They allow the fish to pick up the bait and swim away with absolutely zero resistance. The line peels off the spool freely. Only after the fish has fully committed do they engage the reel and sweep the rod. Bass and walleye fishermen are incredibly stubborn. We think our fish are different. We think we have to force the issue with heavy rods and tight lines. But a fish is a fish. They all hate feeling unnatural tension when they are trying to eat a meal. If the guys catching 50-pound carp know that slackline is the secret to getting a cautious fish to commit, why do we refuse to apply that logic to a 3-pound smallmouth bass? It is time to swallow our pride and take a lesson from the guys sitting in lawn chairs. Winding it in with a little slack. Even when you are power fishing with crankbaits or spinnerbaits, the slack line concept still applies. It sounds crazy to say you should fish a moving bait with slack line. But I am not talking about big loops of loose line on the water. I am talking about rod angle. Many anglers point their rod straight at the lure while reeling. This creates a direct, straight, tight line from the reel spool to the bait. If a fish slaps at it, the bait gets pulled away. Instead, hold your rod low and off to the side at an angle. This creates a slight belly in the line. The water drag on that belly acts as a tiny buffer. When a fish hits a crankbait, that slight belly allows the bait to pause and get sucked into the mouth before the rod actually loads up with pressure. You will notice that your hookups on moving baits become much more solid. The hooks will be buried deep in the jaw rather than just barely skin hooked on the side of the face. That tiny buffer makes a massive difference right at the side of the boat. When the water gets freezing cold, the slack line rule becomes absolute law during the winter months or early spring when the water is freezing. Cold water fish are incredibly lethargic. Their metabolism slows down. They do not chase baits aggressively, and they do not strike with power. When a winter bass picks up a jig, it barely opens its mouth. It just sucks it in very slowly. If your line is tight, a lethargic fish will drop that bait the instant it feels the weight of your rod. They do not have the energy to fight for a meal. You have to make it incredibly easy for them. Fishing a hair jig or a blade bait on a semi-slack line in deep cold water is an art form. You lift the bait, and then you follow it back down with the rod tip, keeping just enough slack so the bait falls freely, but not so much that you lose track of it. When you lift the rod again, it just feels heavy. There is no tap, there is no jerk, just dead weight. Without that slack on the fall, you would never even know that a cold water fish had picked up your bait. Changing your old habits. I know exactly what you are thinking right now. You are thinking it is going to be impossible to change the way you have fished for 20 years. Muscle memory is a powerful thing. Every time your bait hits the water, your hand automatically reaches for the reel handle to tighten up. Breaking this habit takes conscious effort. The next time you go to the lake, do a drill. Cast out a soft plastic bait. When it hits the water, physically, take your hand off the reel handle. Put your hand in your pocket. Force yourself to stand there and do nothing while the bait sinks. Watch the line. Force your brain to accept the slack. It will feel incredibly uncomfortable at first. You will feel anxious. You will feel like you are doing something terribly wrong. But the first time you see that line jump, and you pull your hand out of your pocket, reel down, and set the hook into a heavy fish, everything will change forever. The anxiety will turn into pure confidence. You have to break the old muscle memory to unlock this new level. The final proof is in the net. Let us summarize why we are making this fundamental change. You are intentionally introducing slack into your line to eliminate the unnatural resistance that makes fish spit your bait. You are trading the instant feeling in your hands for the visual confirmation of your eyes. By doing this, you are giving the fish the time and the confidence they need to fully inhale the lure. You are allowing moving baits to fold into the mouth, and you are letting sinking baits fall perfectly straight down into the strike zone. Over the course of a long fishing season, the difference is absolutely staggering. You will stop complaining about short strikes. You will stop wondering why fish are just nipping at the tail of your worm. You will start putting far more fish in the net. The tight line technique is a relic of the past, from a time before we had high visibility braided lines and highly engineered soft plastics. Evolution in fishing means letting go of bad habits. Give them some slack, and they will give you the fight of your life. So there you have it. The tight line trap is finally exposed. We have spent our entire fishing lives thinking that keeping a tight line gave us ultimate control. But the plot twist is that your tight line was actually acting as an early warning system, telling every single fish to spit your bait out before you could even react. By shifting your mindset from feeling the bite to watching the bite, you completely change the physics of the strike. You give the fish the freedom to eat naturally, and you gain the mechanical advantage of a high-speed hook set. It takes practice to break years of muscle memory, but the reward is a heavier live well and fewer stories about the one that got away. Thank you so much for watching and spending your time with us today. If this video made you rethink your approach, please hit that subscribe button and give the video a like. Now I want to hear from you down in the comments. Be honest. How many fish do you think you have ripped the bait away from just because you were too quick on the draw?